It's time for another Ask Me Anything. In this segment, you guys have the opportunity to ask me any questions you want, whether it's about barbecue or my channel or me personally or anything that you want to ask me. If you do have a question, just drop it down in the comment section below. I'll also periodically post on my community tab on YouTube to collect questions from you guys as well. So if you have any questions, drop them down in the comment section below. I'm going to kick it off right away. You might have noticed that I have my son with me. I'm just looking after my son right now. So he's going to join in on the Q&A. Maybe he can answer some of the questions. The first question is from Alan Mitchell. Smoke Trails Barbecue. The question I was going to ask was about your smoker. I owned a Joe for a while, but had to change it to Flaming Coals offset smoker because I was having so many issues with it, including its size, its thickness of metal, and airflow. Watching your videos has done a massive amount of you've done a massive amount of modifications to yours, and I wanted to know why you haven't changed yours for something that's more designer, like designed for the way that you run your smoker, i.e. with a thicker metal baffle plate, larger insulated firebox, and larger cook chamber. Yeah, I know there's a lot of loyalty to Joe's, but surely a better smoker would mean less messing around and better barbecue. Thanks, Al. Yeah, thanks, Al. That's a great question. I think there's a couple reasons off the top of my head why I haven't switched to another offset smoker. There's three reasons. So the first reason is money. Smokers are expensive, especially when you get into custom brand. Okay. Jacob needs some baby crack. Here we go. This is the good stuff here. There you go, bud. Here. Put that in your mouth. You just enjoy that. We'll continue talking. Okay, so the first one is money. It costs a lot of money to upgrade to an expensive offset smoker. In some cases, it's thousands of dollars. And I just don't have that kind of money right now. And I've got a long laundry list of other kinds of smokers that I want to buy. For example, I want to get a Kamado style smoker eventually, and I also want to get a Weber Smoky Mountain. So it's not in the budget right now, really. The second reason is that I live in Canada, so availability of offset smokers that are custom built and higher gauge steel, they're larger. You have to get them custom made, and there's not a lot of like fabricators or vendors around where I live. And the ones that that do exist are very expensive. So again, it goes back to money. And I think the third reason is I'm kind of liking just using the Oklahoma Joe's right now because I get to help out you guys that might have an Oklahoma Joe's. And a lot of people have that specific model of smoker, and they have a lot of challenges with fire management and airflow on it. But I think it's a really great entry-level smoker to get people into barbecue that's really affordable, and it gets them into the offset smoker lifestyle. Whereas if we didn't have something like that, you might exclude a lot of people that can't afford an expensive offset smoker. So I like to be able to help people out on that as well. So that's a big reason that I'm not switching at this moment. Okay. So Tombs DLC said, you've mentioned before that you'd like to be able to sell your brisket. Have you made any progress in that arena? Pop-ups, catering, etc.? A little bit. I mean, I've made briskets for friends and family and neighbors, things like that. Not currently charging money, just kind of cutting my teeth on it and seeing what it's going to be like. My brother recently suggested that I do like a sort of friends and family type catered event in my home. So we would have a bunch of, his friends or some of like friends of friends come over, and then I'd cater that event. And like I'd get to understand a little bit about how that would work, and it would be a friendly environment. It wouldn't be strangers. So that might be the next step for me. I'll do like a catered event within my own house just to see how it works. And then the plan is eventually, maybe I get into like renting out a kitchen or something and then selling brisket out of it. I don't know. That's like really far away at this point. I just want to understand better like what people like, what they don't like. So next step for me is probably that safe environment type thing. Get family or friends into a catered event type thing. Maybe like I'll pair it with like a Scotch tasting or something with my brother's friends, and then I'll get a good sense of it. So hope that answers your question. Proper brisket resting techniques in a cooler. This is from Dimitri Vandyuk. I put a hot brisket in a cooler for a few hours to rest it. It came out overdone and a bit mushy. I'd like to know the proper way to do it. Okay, you want some more baby crack? Baby crack? Here you go. Okay, here you go. You're good. You're good. See, it's all the people on YouTube are there. Yeah, we're gonna answer their questions. Okay, so what is the proper technique for resting your brisket in a cooler? First thing you need to know, if you properly finish your brisket, so you meet the 3 finishing tests. The first test is the probe test, so it probes tender like room temperature butter. Second test is the temperature test, so your probe should read at around 200 to 207, within that sort of range. Then that tells you your brisket is in the zone of potentially being done. And the third test is the bend test or the feel test. You take your gloves, you reach under the brisket, you feel how it folds in on itself. If it's stiff, then it's not done yet. But the main test I use is the probe test. If it probes like butter in the thickest part of the flat, then usually that tells me that it's done. So if it meets all those tests, the brisket is done. It's going to be tender. It doesn't need that extra time in the cooler to continue cooking. And what happens is if you put the perfectly finished brisket in a cooler and you don't do anything to it, you don't vent it, you don't let it rest on the counter for 15 minutes, then you get what's called carryover cooking. And what that does is it continues to cook the brisket and it brings it well past that perfect tenderness, and it can make it mushy. So if you still want to use the cooler, what you can do is you take the brisket out, you vent it. So if it's butcher's paper, just cut open the butcher's paper. If it's foil, unwrap the foil, let the steam out, close it back up, and let it sit on the counter for about 15 minutes. We want to bring that temperature down below 200 before we put it in the cooler. After 15 minutes, then we can put it into the cooler, and it's not going to overcook in or continue carryover cooking in the actual cooler itself. So that's one strategy. The other thing you can do is if your brisket is still tough and it doesn't meet those 3 tests, but for some reason you still have to take it out and go somewhere, then you can use the carryover cooking in the cooler to your advantage. And I've done this before. So you take the brisket out, it's a little bit tight, it's not exactly finished yet, but you put it in the cooler without venting it, without doing anything to it, straight in the cooler, and that's going to carry over cook and it's going to get really tender. And by the time you arrive at an event, for example, your brisket will be done. So there's a couple different ways you can use the cooler based on what you're trying to do with the brisket. Okay, what has been the most difficult thing to smoke except brisket? This is from Etienne Oligny. Sorry, I probably butchered that name. The most difficult thing to smoke besides brisket, probably turkey. Turkey is there's a couple problems with it. It's huge. It's like a big meat globe with a hollow interior. It's hard to get it to cook evenly. And you want the breast to be, I like it at 155 degrees Fahrenheit to get that perfect tenderness. And I like the thighs and the dark meat, the drums, to be 170 to 180 to render out all of the fat and connective tissues. So it's really difficult to get all of those things perfectly lined up, especially when I'm using my offset smoker, because the heat is coming from one direction and it's cooking the bird unevenly. So, you might have to, an hour into the cook, foil the breast so that the breast slows down cooking and the thighs and the drums can catch up. But it depends on what you're cooking on. On my Traeger, for example, it cooks things pretty evenly. On the offset smoker, unevenly. In my other smokers, like my electric smoker, a little bit more unevenly. So you have to kind of know your smoker. You have to know what you're cooking on and sort of like foil things, check temperature a lot. So yeah, turkey is a real challenge. It's okay, buddy. You're okay. You're okay. Here, let me get one of these. There you go. Okay. So this one is from Dapige. Dapige. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. What are your thoughts on stainless steel offset smokers that run on wood splits? I'm interested in building one in Saigon where rain and rust could be a problem. Okay, cool. I've never seen a stainless steel offset smoker. I'm assuming because stainless steel is really expensive. That's why most people use different materials for it, like big propane tanks and pieces of pipeline and not like just raw steel. So if you have that material available to you and you know how to weld it, then go for it. It's probably going to be a pretty cool smoker. But the one thing I would say, if you're worried about rain and you're thinking that's the reason you don't want to make a traditional offset smoker with like a large 250-gallon propane tank or something, I wouldn't worry about that too much. You can either you can just finish the bare metal after you're done welding the smoker, and there's lots of tutorials on YouTube about how to do that. You can paint it with high temperature paint. You can oil it with oil every time you use it, or you could just cover it with something. So stainless steel, super expensive, but if you have it, I mean, go for it. But there's lots of ways to waterproof your smoker though. Okay, Simon Pause says, the brand of charcoal lump briquette you use or recommend or not, because there's a lot of different brands and price ranges. Have you considered buying or DIYing a more expensive, higher quality offset smoker? In my research in Ottawa, there's not a lot of companies that sell high quality smokers. Okay, so first question about briquettes and brands of charcoal. I'll use anything that I can really get my hands on. I don't really have a preferred brand. I usually like to use lump charcoal in my offset smoker. When I'm grilling, sometimes on my Weber kettle, I'll use briquettes, but I mainly operate in the world of lump charcoal. And within that world, there's all sorts of brands. Some of them are smaller lumps of charcoal, and some of them are larger diameter lumps of charcoal. And I think, all things aside with the type of wood that those pieces of charcoal use or those brands of charcoal, and all of their marketing and advertising, I think the biggest thing, in my opinion, is how big the actual lumps are. That's the biggest that's going to be the biggest determination of how well you can manage your smoker. So, for example, smaller lumps of charcoal, if you get a bag with like little tiny lumps, those are going to burn hotter and faster. So you're going to get higher temperatures, but it's going to last for a shorter amount of time, and you'll be adding charcoal more often. If they're larger, the larger lumps are going to burn at a lower temperature, but they're going to burn much longer. So it really depends on what you like. I personally like the larger lumps because I find it easier to manage temperatures. I will actually think about doing a video on different brands though soon. So that's a really good idea and suggestion. Your second question about have you ever thought of buying or DIYing a smoker? I already talked about why I haven't bought another offset smoker. Haven't talked about DIYing. That's something I'm actually planning on doing. I'm going to buy a MIG welder soon, and I'm going to figure out how to weld, and I want to build my own DIY offset smoker. So I need to figure out what I'm going to make it out of. I live in Alberta, and we're an oil and gas kind of province. So, there should be lots of pipeline around and propane tanks from farms and ranches. So I'm going to look for something like that to make it out of, and then I'll learn how to weld, and I'll kind of price it out. But that's a project for probably 2022. All right, that is everything. So thanks again, guys. If you have any questions, just drop them in the description section below, and I'm happy to answer them. I'll probably do this on a bi-weekly or monthly basis. Thanks a lot, guys, and happy smoking.